You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Hello? Is that the famous astronomer, Sir Patrick Moore?
It is, very much so.
Any news on the space front?
Quite so. Elon Musk has just designed and developed 5 gigantic, state-of-the-art rocket ships. All members of Parliament, along with the American Senate, have first-class tickets aboard them, you see. They're told they're going to the moon.
Told? Where exactly are they going, Sir Patrick?
The new anomaly discovered recently astronomically. A huge black hole.
Special guest with us today on Twin Souls, and his name is William Lawrence. And William Lawrence has been doing experiments in the past with the quantum realm, and this was discovered by chance. Hello, William.
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Yeah, and we know, William, that the reason that we wanted you on our show is, one, that you're very well known, and also with regards to the research that you stumbled across with regards to water and light. And this is a subject matter that I think perhaps has upset higher people in higher powers because of the simple nature of the experiment. So tell us a little bit, William, about yourself, first of all, and how you got involved with the subject of UFOs and alien contact.
Now, in the beginning, I was just an average, regular guy, going to work and coming home. And I've always been fascinated by spirits and ghosts. So I would go and do ghost hunts and search for ghosts using digital cameras, and I would watch all the TV shows that would be on regarding that. And at one time, I had an idea that I could communicate with spirits using visible light frequencies. So I developed an experiment to analyze sunlight, the visible light frequency. And the reason I had this idea was when I was in California, I had sunlight coming in through my window. So I decided to make a rainbow. I grabbed a water bottle and a digital camera, and I projected a rainbow onto a black refrigerator that was located next to the window. There I took digital photographs of the rainbow. While looking at the rainbow, I zoomed into the light. I seen things inside the spectrum that didn't appear to be normal. I saw an Indian crossing a creek with 3 men on horseback to the left and a small cabin to the right with a hanging pole where he would hang deer carcass. I saw a woman opening the gate to a cemetery. It was a brick wall with a chain link gate, and you could see trees in the background with tombstones everywhere. It was very dark blues, and the woman was going into the cemetery. I seen an army soldier with a bazooka on his back, and he was smiling. I seen an old temple that looked like it could have been from the 14th, 15th century, with hundreds of people outside on the stairs and looking around, like just all stand still, because this is a still digital frame. In doing that in 2009, in 2015, I remembered what I did while I was still ghost hunting in New York. So I was like, let me develop an experiment to communicate with ghosts. So I grabbed what tools I could find. I went out and I ran the experiment. And then, to my surprise, after reviewing the evidence, not only did I find spirits, non-physical, but I found physical beings in the light where they look like humans, and I found what seemed to be advanced reptiles. So I found 3 species: non-physical humans, physical humans, and then the reptile species. But at this time, I was not into the extraterrestrial. I was only into the paranormal, but I wasn't into it hardcore. But after running the experiment, 2 weeks later, I was visited by these massive spheres. It was a large, giant orange sphere. It had a black substance swirling inside, and it came very close. It came in from the south, moving north. It stopped directly behind my house. I called for a witness. The witness came. We looked at it. I walked towards it, and then it moved slowly to the east. This is when I started putting together the extraterrestrial connection, and whenever I realized that not only am I dealing with the paranormal, but I'm seeing what that is extraterrestrial.
Yes. Yes, I do understand, William, that, your process is slightly different from scrying. Now, we know that scrying was something that was performed by the ancient Egyptians, and certainly Dr. Raymond Moody has written about this within one of his books called Reunions, and your process is slightly different. And it's interesting also that this is done through light, and you have stated before on some of your shows that light carries information. So can you address that a little bit more for us, William, please?
So what we rely on currently is radio waves, which sends information, and it sends quite a bit of information, but that sends it to a radio tower, and from that radio tower, that information is transferred into fiber optics, and it's fiber optics is what we are relying on to talk to each other now. Most information is transferred through fiber optics, and that's in a cable where light particles are being blinked really fast, and it's sending the information in binary. Now, with radio waves, you're limited to the amount of information and data you can send. You can send up to 500 to 1,000 megabytes or 1 gigabyte. Now, with the visible light spectrum, which has been in use, I know, by the United States Navy since the 1970s, you can send over 1,000 gigabytes a second.
Wow.
So the visible light spectrum can hold 1,000 times more information and data than the radio spectrum. Now, this light can also be sent in free space. This would be considered the free space optical program, where militaries and governments around the world are using lasers where they encode data. They modulate data into the light. They then send that light to a receiver, which can then get the light and then demodulate it into data. Now, NASA is also using this technology with their new satellite communication, so they'll be able to send more information. This is still a little different than what I'm seeing in the photographs, because the information that they're encoding in the visible light spectrum is still in binary. Binary is ones and zeros, so they're translating all the data and information into binary ones and zeros, and then they're receiving it and then putting it back together to form the information. So the information that I'm seeing in the visible light spectrum is real-time data.
Right. So what I was going to ask, yes, it's pure. It's rather like a medium. I mean, we're all mediators. The human brain, as you know, is the receptor, like a TV set, giving a simple example that's designed to receive signals that operate on a higher frequency and our senses can't detect. So the human brain is also the modulator, and you're getting these images through in real time. So from your perspective, William, do you believe, I mean, I know that on one of these experiments that you performed, that you actually stated that those on the, I will call other side, because that's the only way we can interpret interdimensional, that you were observed. So how did you feel about that? What did you pick up from being observed? I believe there was a male entity that a few of them that observed you watching them through this visible light spectrum.
Yes, and this would actually categorically prove what you're saying, that it's actually at the moment.
Yes.
real time. And what happened was the very first photograph, I caught him off guard. I found a tall man wearing a robe, a silver robe with a pointy hat. And in front of him was a bald man with a black coat, kneeled down in front of the tall man with the robe. And he was holding a brown bowl in his hand. And the tall man wearing a robe was washing something. And you could see some red dripping down into the bowl. That was the very first photograph of my experiment in 2015. After that one photograph, the same day during the experiment, I captured 3 different entities, but they were all looking directly into the camera from how I was projecting it. And they acknowledged being seen. So since I made the discovery, every single entity that appears, they appear right side up. So you never have to turn a photo left or right. They're appearing right side up, and they're looking directly into the camera. So they know that they're being seen, and that they want to be seen.
So it's rather like, I know that with mediumship, I don't like the word mediumship because it sounds very Victorian. Being an interpreter, that we see lights around people. So perhaps I'm just guessing here, that your energy would have been known to them and theirs to yours, but you don't see them as lights. You see them as actual physical entities. Did you recognize the individual through the imagery that you received at all? Did you get any feelings of who these people were, or what time period they were from?
The non-physical spirit, whenever I did facial recognition and I compared it to my own face, it was almost a perfect match. So there is a good possibility it could be my own consciousness outside of my body that exists somewhere else. I have no physical evidence of that, but I did not recognize the bald man or the tall man in the robe or the human spirit, which does have similar facial features to my own. There was other entities that appeared. There was the reptiles were big gold reflective eyes. They had no nose, but 2 holes where their nostril holes would be. They had an upside down mouth and a large brown head. So I was able to catalog 2 of those, the same species, but one was taken in the first year of experimentation and the other was taken a year later because I ran the experiment for 2 years. Now, I did ask questions, and they would sometimes answer my questions with images. I asked to see animals. They showed me a giraffe and a lion. I asked to see buildings, and they showed me what looked to be cities. And I asked a question, how can I trust you? How do I know I'm doing the right thing? Because I was very confused during the first year of experimentation. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. So I had said, how can I trust you? They sent me a stuffed animal, a photo of a gremlin from the movie Gremlins that I had as a little boy. So they actually put a gremlin in there because they know at that time it comforted me. So now they're able to hear whatever I'm saying and input data, and only 2 photographs came through. One I can mention was, it looks like my grandfather. So he did come through in one of the photographs. But the rest are just random people or species.
Yeah. So do you think that these images, William, are from different timelines being sent to you in your time? Because I know that, there are alternative dimensions that are operating on certain frequencies all around us at the same time. So do you think that what you're being given is certain references to different timelines, or do you think that they operate within one dimension, i.e. one world? What's your opinion on that?
As for time, I'm not a strong believer in time. No. For the fact that our soul or spirit can live for eternity. So there's no way to really tell time. So I'm not exactly sure where they're from, what dimension. They could be in another dimension. They could be in another universe. They could be in another galaxy, because our universe is just that large. And in order for them to send this data and information instantly, they must be using some form of advanced technology with like quantum entanglement, quantum teleportation. But as far as time goes, I know that we can tell time because of the sun and the earth's rotation. But when we leave our body and we travel back, to wherever we travel after Earth, I'm not exactly sure time is kept the same way.
No, time.
So what could be 100 years for us could be a couple seconds for them.
Certainly the reptilians and the two men sounds to me like some form of initiation, and I know that most people will jump immediately on the bandwagon with regards to reptilians, because I'm sure you're aware that here in the UK we have our own researcher called David Icke, who actually has written quite a lot about the reptilian agenda, and that, you know, a lot of the viewpoints of the reptilians is very negative, but we could say the same for our human species. We have good people, we have bad people, but it certainly sounds to me as though what you were looking at was some form of initiation, which is very important. And I doubt very much that you would connect with these random images. I think these images were sent to you for a certain reason. What was your take on what you were viewing there with regards to the man with the bowl?
It seemed like a ritual. So it seemed that they were performing a ritual, and I'm not exactly sure what they were doing. So it seemed that could have been some type of spiritual ritual. It just appeared to be a ritual. But what I found with the species is that it seems like they're all working together. So I found the mammals like us, and then I found the reptiles. So I believe that they're all working together.
So what's your take on with the connection that we have at the moment with, you know, we have these UFO reports with greys and in some instances with reptilians, and we also, not getting too complicated here, but with regards to us as physical entities, I and you and many other people believe that we have a soul that passes this dimension. And, you know, do you believe that these aliens are operating on higher frequencies of awareness and coming through to us that way, or do you believe that they are nuts and bolts, you know, in physical construct? What's your opinion about that?
So the information that I've received, I'm not exactly sure how I can describe, you know, where they are, who they are, or what they are. So I do my best not to speculate as to what they are or where they are. But what I'm trying to do now is just understand the physical evidence of what I found, and not speculate as to who they are.
Yeah. Now I know that you tried to take your research to some pretty high people within the world of like government and scientific corps. Can you explain a little bit about that, William? About what you were doing there, what your intentions were behind that?
So if you were to Google what to do if you find an extraterrestrial message, it gives you instructions. You contact the United Nations and you contact SETI Institute. SETI Institute is in the United States. They search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Yeah. And what I did is I contacted these programs and institutions back when I made the discovery in 2015 with the information that I detected extraterrestrial messages in the visible light spectrum. Seth Shostak of SETI Institute completely dismissed my discovery by email and by phone, saying it was no different than looking at the reflection of a bumper of a car. Now, fast forward 5 months later, they started a program called Laser SETI, where they're actually using a prism to bend light frequencies, and they're projecting that light frequency into a photo detector, and they're taking photographs, digital photographs. Now, their technology is much more advanced than mine, but now they're using my exact concepts and methods. Wow. And completely dismissing my discovery. And even the hardware that they built, Elliot Gillum, who built the device, couldn't explain how he came up with the idea, but even his hardware looked like some of the equipment that I use. So scientists are using my methods. Now I'm claiming that I detected extraterrestrial messages in the visible light spectrum. And I ran the experiment from 2015 to 2017. And for the last 2 years, I've been doing research into the field of quantum physics and astrophysics and everything beyond. And what I'm finding is that quantum entanglement gives you the ability to send information faster than the speed of light. So if you have, and photons, which is a visible light particle, part of the visible light spectrum, a photon is a single particle of light. You can entangle one photon, and you could have the opposite photon on the other side of the universe, and you could communicate instantaneously. So regardless of where you're at in the universe, you could talk instantly.
Yes, and also the potential of this is teleportation. Am I right?
Correct. Quantum entanglement, quantum teleportation. That's how the information is transferred. Scientists can't even understand it. Einstein referred to it as spooky action at a distance. Well, I can assure you that it is spooky because I have found what seem to be ghosts or spirits using this quantum entanglement. And what scientists searching for extraterrestrial messages have only been specializing in looking into radio waves. But it takes, to get to the center of our galaxy, which is only 25,000 light years away. Our galaxy is 100,000 light years apart. But to get to the center of our galaxy, the Milky Way, the black hole, it would take 25,000 light years to get there. Now, radio waves moves at the speed of light. And the same with visible light waves. So even if you were to send a message without using quantum teleportation, but using what scientists use now to communicate, it would take you 25,000 years just to talk to someone in the middle of our galaxy. And in order to get there, the fastest we can move in space is around 35,000 miles an hour. So in order to get 25,000 light years, it would take 461 million years to travel there.
It's rather like bad dial-up, and then we discover broadband, isn't it?
Exactly. And now imagine this. That's just our Milky Way galaxy. That's one of hundreds of billions of galaxies. So we already know that we can't move faster than 35,000 miles an hour. We can't even move around in our own galaxy. How are we going to get to other galaxies? The question is not how are we going to physically get there, but how can we non-physically project ourselves there?
Yes.
So this technology is wrapped in with teleportation, telepathy, and quantum entanglement. So in order to communicate vast distances of space, you can't use radio waves, and you can't even send optical waves like lasers. You can't rely on that. The only way to communicate intergalactically is to rely on quantum entanglement. And I've found with my research that quantum entanglement is connected to many things, including telepathy and our brains and how people are able to perceive other people's thoughts, psychics. So there's so many parallels and connections between mediums and ghost hunters and people who look into UFOs. It's just the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that, you know, with regards to your amazing research, your bent light research, I mean, I really do believe, William, that you're onto something very big here. And I know you're a young lad that catalogues everything that you have. Now, going back to your experiment, the first time that you did the bent light experiment, I want to know, how did you feel? What was your reaction to what you had discovered?
I was in amazement because I had the idea. In 2009, I did it by accident, by just messing around. But in 2015 is when I put something together to replicate what I did then. And I told people 2 weeks prior, I said, you know, I'm building this experiment. I'm going to be able to communicate with spirits after Earth. And some people looked at me like I was crazy. Others, no comment. But then 2 weeks later, I put it all together. I went outside. I ran the experiment for an hour. I go inside because at this time I have no idea if I captured anything. So then I go inside and I'm reviewing the evidence and I'm looking at the photographs that I just took of the spectrum, and I see something. And I was in a bit of amazement. I wasn't in shock. I wasn't afraid. I was just in a moment of, wow, this works. I can't believe it works. And then from there on out, I continued that experiment daily for 2 years. And in those 2 years, I was able to catalog over 40 different unexplained objects or entities appearing in the visible light spectrum.
That's incredible. And the other thing I wanted to ask, William, is there any set, environmental conditions that need to be correct when you're doing this experiment? I mean, how can you do it in the dark, or does it have to be in the light?
I only ran the experiment with sunlight, so you have to have access with sunlight.
Right.
I found that in the afternoon, when the sun's down at around a 45-degree angle, it works best. But also, it doesn't work every day. I ran the experiment, and for a couple weeks, I gathered a few photographs unexplained. But then I continued to run the experiment, and for a month or two, I did not capture anything. So then 2 months went by. I didn't catalog no evidence. And then a week later after that, I was able to start picking up more and more. So as long as you have access to sunlight and you're able to follow the methods, which I have had the instructions public since the day of discovery, you can run the experiment yourself. I've had other people's run the experiment. I had someone in Manchester, England, actually pick up on the bald man. I had someone outside of Saudi Arabia near Oman, a physicist there graduating. He ran the experiment and was able to see one of the reptiles, the gold reflective eye reptiles. And I've had others here in the States run the experiment, and they've picked up on non-physical humans. So other people are running the experiment and able to see as well.
It's rather like the, the ghost box. I mean, you're a little bit like myself. I mean, I have never discovered anything as incredible as your Bent Light project, but certainly very much into the UFO field and then the psychic element. And we did experiments with ghost boxes, and I understand because we're very, we're not scientists, but we are scientific within our exploration. And I remember that we had some conversations with some guys who had been killed in a recent war, and on having this dialogue with them, with the ghost box in a group of us, that the guys are reporting back that, when I asked them what's it like on the other side, and he said it's everything that you can dream of. So I understand that everything is recorded, every piece of information that's sent out, memories, experiences, our hopes, our dreams, all of these are attributes that are linked with our consciousness. And I believe that when we die and we pass over, that we go to a higher level, and then of course we integrate with other souls. So I am absolutely, and always have believed, that those on the other side are able to communicate. However, it is sometimes in crude methods electronically, but what you're explaining is amazing. I think Ronnie's got a question.
Yes, I'm just going to say that what you were describing, Philip, is audio, whereas what William's describing is visual.
Oh, of course.
So it's amazing that the two are separate, but we need the audio and visual to understand what we're seeing as a representation.
Have you used a ghost box while you're doing the experiments, William?
I have not ran any other devices or experiments with the experiment that I'm running. Now, what you're describing too is what we would call EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, where you're able to run a digital audio recorder and you ask questions in an area that is known to be paranormal, and you could get answers back. And I've actually had a few EVPs where I've actually caught audio of people talking and answering my questions. And now that would be like an electronic voice phenomena. And what you're saying with the digital, what I'm doing as well, it's still electronic, but it's leaving a digital footprint. So they're able to embed their images. So I haven't ran any audio, but I was able to capture audio.
Wow. And
I captured audio with the Moonlight experiment.
Wow, that's really awesome stuff. So with regards to you sending your information out to these higher sources, have you had any other comeback at all from anyone else, or any interest from any other scientific circles with regards to your research and your work?
As of now, the scientific community in the United States, the people who I've reached out to, are very dismissive. And the reality of the situation is this: they can come back and dismiss my work with their opinions, but they can't provide physical evidence to disprove the physical evidence that I'm bringing to the table. Now, I have well over 10 highly detailed, we're talking bilateral symmetry, and highly detailed photographs in the visible light spectrum of objects that are unexplained. Now, it's already been scientifically proven that information can be transferred with quantum entangled photons. Now, the amount of photons scientists have entangled to send an image is around 18 photons. In 1 centimeter of sunlight, there's over 100 million photons. Now, my images consist of a lot more than centimeters. We're talking over 2 inches by 4 inches of information and photons. So we're looking at hundreds upon hundreds of billions of photons entangled to form a coherent image. So now scientists know that the information that I'm presenting to them is scientific, but they're dismissing it because of the fact that how simple the discovery was. And also, I did not go to school for quantum physics. I have only taught myself what I have learned from the discovery, and I have researched what I needed to research that is the same as what consists of the discovery. So I'm a self-taught scientist, and scientists do not like that. The ones that I've reached out to here in the States.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel also that's very true. But there again, you see, the greatest discoveries of all time have come from certain individuals that did not follow the general protocols of the scientific establishment. And even those theories that seem wild and wacky normally end up being the true theory in many years. And obviously, we don't want you to pass over, right now and then someone else saying, oh, yes, William Lawrence was right, But I have always suspected that researchers, authors and investigators' works are secretly being, assessed by these higher establishments of power. And they've been helping themselves to all sorts of stuff. It's true to say that, they have access to vast amounts of money, especially this secret military elite, who, it wouldn't surprise me, have got tabs on you and are watching you. I don't mean to scare you here.
I was hacked by Russia and China 3 months into the discovery. And when I made the discovery, I went public the day of. So literally a month maybe later, I was hacked by China and Russia on the same day. China deleted their email alert that I had in my Gmail because I seen it there in the morning, and then in the afternoon it was gone, but Russia's was still there. So I retraced the IP address to a building in Russia. I forget the town, but I went public with it. So anytime that other people have came into my realm, I went public with that information. So I know for a fact that governments are interested because governments are using this technology. And I know for a fact what I just seen and what I discovered. So I'm certain that governments either A, already have this technology and are in communication with other civilizations in our universe and know the truth, or B, that they have the technology but they're cut off, that the other civilizations will not talk to them.
Yeah, I'm inclined to actually sway with B, actually, because I think they would know. William, may I ask, it seems to me that you were meant to discover this. You mentioned about the ghosts and UFOs. It seems to me that you're psychic. Have you ever sat in circle at all prior to this, or do you sit in circle, or have you ever done anything like that?
I have not. As a young child, I've always been able to feel when energy is around me, like spirits. And I always had a passion for ghosts. When I was 19, I was living in a house that was actually haunted, and the entity would hold me to the bed and he wouldn't let go. And then on the third week, he just showed himself to me. He was completely solid, gray, bony, holes where his eyes were. His mouth was wide open. He had bony hands, and he was just screaming at the top of his lungs at me, but I couldn't hear him. And I left that house never to go back. So that was a very intense moment to where I was confronted with a very angry entity, a spirit. And I'm not sure why he was angry, but he was angry. But most of my experiences are positive. So I'm always able to sense spirits, and I'm always able to communicate with them, but I've never really followed that path. I just go to work and come home and watch ghost hunting shows.
Yeah. You also said, William, that you saw these orbs, these orange orbs with kind of like a black liquid inside them. I know that there are reports very much around England and also in your great country of the United States of America. Skinwalker Ranch is one of them, and I do know that some of those orbs, the mediator was able to determine whether or not they were good energy or they were bad energy just by the feel from them. So, with regards to going back to when you mentioned about these orbs, first of all, what did you feel these orbs represented, and how did they make you feel?
At the time, it was the size of the moon. It looked like if you were to look at the moon, it was a giant orange sphere, and the black substance swirling around it was silent. It just came closer and closer and closer. At this time, I knew that I discovered something in the light, but I thought it was connected to the spirits. And then I believe I may have been making the extraterrestrial connection. But as it appeared, I had a sense of, yes, like, okay, this is happening. And I called for my wife to come and witness it. And I just started to walk towards it. Like, I was hoping, because it came so close, I just assumed it was going to continue and just land. But it did not. But I was unafraid.
Did you pick anything up from the light? Did you feel anything from it? What was going through your head at the time of this viewing?
I was just trying to take it in and just watch it, but there was no information sent to me. It was just a visible, what I could see. I could see it was unknown. I'd never seen it before, and I just watched it until it got out of sight. And it eventually kept going east after it was coming north, and it stopped coming from the south, moving north. And then after I walked towards it, it just started floating east and just stayed going until it was out of sight. That was one of the visitations. For 2 years, I was visited by what looked like stars in the sky. They would just appear randomly. Sometimes I could just go outside, look up at the sky, and then ask for questions. I would ask questions. Should I keep doing what I'm doing? People were saying this. What should I do? A star would appear, and then it would come down, and then it would stop. And then it would either do two things. It would either dart left or right, or it would shoot right back into space. I was able to capture one of those events on camera, and what I saw was a blue dim light, and it was very high in the atmosphere. But when I zoomed in, because I had a new camera where I had a very powerful zoom, when I zoomed into it, it looked like some type of spaceship. So all I saw from the ground was a blue dim light. But then after looking into the photo and zooming in, I was able to see it was like a spaceship, but half of it was invisible, and then only little parts of it were showing. So it was very strange. So I was just visited many times by what appeared to be stars.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I know that, with regards to psychic exploration, spirit communication, ufology, I, like you, have always maintained that there is a connection between all of them. I'm not saying that they're all on the same level, but there are connections between, because they've all been decompartmentalized. And I believe that this has been the case, not just because we don't understand enough as it is at the moment with regards to it, but because the system wants us to go down that road, because they believe that we'll never be able to join the dots up. I really do believe, William, that you are definitely starting to join the dots. And also, we go through this level of confusion of not knowing where it's taking us, or where certain information is coming from. But it certainly seems to me, talking to you, that you do feel confident to know where you're taking this. So with regards to your continual, I know you're saying you're not doing any more experiments at the moment, but do you foresee yourself doing more of these experiments?
As of now, the experimentation and the experiments that I've run, I've already proved the theory. I had a hypothesis. I followed the scientific method. I ran the experiment for 2 years. I gathered over 40 highly detailed photographs of unexplained entities forming in the visible light spectrum. My goal now, I cannot bring this experiment to the next level to where I feel it should be. My goal now is to communicate the results, research the science involved with it, which doesn't even exist at this point, but scientists are very close. They're already sending information with quantum entanglement and quantum distribution with keys. They're teleporting data. They're sending, images now. They're entangling stuff. So scientists are very close. They're already using invisible light spectrum. And at this time, I believe I was one of the very first humans on Earth to search for extraterrestrial messages in the visible light spectrum of our star, the sun. So now scientists look for distant stars and try to intercept messages. But now with quantum entanglement, they could just encode their data with our own star, the closest star to Earth. If I was in another galaxy, I needed to contact Earth, I would entangle my information with the closest light source to Earth, and that is our sun. Therefore, anyone with access to the sun could access my message. So the future of what I'm trying to do is communicate the results to other open-minded scientists where they can look at the information that I'm bringing forward and my claim, which is I detected extraterrestrial messages in the visible light spectrum. Here's the proof. Here's how I did it. So now my goal now is to have other people run the experiment and scientists to confirm. Once scientists confirm the discovery, we will then be able to advance the technology and devices that we will use, and we will have a platform to communicate with other civilizations in our universe, which in theory could be where we go after we leave Earth. So we'll be able to chat with people after they leave Earth via video and audio.
It sounds really beautiful, and it reminds me of the film Contact with the brilliant Jodie Foster. And what you're describing is I believe theoretically possible within its entirety. So I believe also that UFOs, they seem to come on a level of high strangeness, or they also leave a level of high strangeness. And I believe that what they're doing is, as you're explaining, they're breaking themselves down into our reality and, producing themselves into our physical realm before they take off and go back to their own realm. And I've always kind of had this idea within my head that, we've got it all wrong, that what we term as physical matter is actually not.
Yes. I was going to add that it's a crying shame, isn't it, William, that the establishments, high-ranking establishments, as well as the governments, will do absolutely nothing to help, because we know, in effect, they just want us to keep our nose pressed to the ground, to be good workers, and don't question anything. It's very sad. You see, what you're saying is if we all work together, we could open up new dimensions, new worlds that are absolutely fantastic. But because of the continuous bickering and the continuous slavery and the continuous lies, they completely compartmentalize the whole thing so that we would never see the truth. What are your views on the government at this time regarding that, the UFO enigma and the otherworldly possibilities? What's your stance on that, William?
That's a great question to bring up on this subject, because it needs to be discussed. And as far as what I know, I've contacted, the White House with this information. I've contacted the FBI. I've contacted the CIA, the NSA. I have sent information, emails, and I have reached out to every establishment, part of the government, NASA, which is still part of the United States government. And even the United Kingdom, I reached out to their space exploration program. And since I made the discovery, I've sent thousands of emails. Here's my take on the government situation. The government had the technology to do what I'm doing. Back in 1975, the United States Navy developed a satellite that they put into space that would modulate data from the sun. It would then reflect that data to Earth, to a receiving station. They called them retro reflectors. And then they would demodulate data into the light. Then they would beam that light to Earth, and it spreads out like a flashlight when you shine it to a wall. It gets bigger and bigger. So the receiving station on the ground could pick up that data from the sunlight and then put that data back into information. The governments already have the technology. The only reason I could see the reason they would keep this technology secret is that it may jeopardize national security. So the information that we're seeing in the light, we're communicating with other civilizations. That's very powerful. The information and knowledge we will gain from talking to people who could be us after Earth is beyond our mind's comprehension. Now, they may see that as jeopardizing our national security when the people or the population, the mass population, knows the truth. How will they handle it? And are they going to just kill each other, or are they going to come together as one? And I don't believe the government has found a proper way to bring that information to the public without scaring the heebie-jeebies out of them.
We only have to address here that there's a water shortage or a fuel shortage, and everyone goes like, it's like a scene from one of David Attenborough's programs on the wildlife. Everyone goes, crazy. So I totally agree with you with regards to the control of this element. But, it's a crying shame that, brilliant people such as yourself are kind of like kept to one side. I would want you to join if I was a secret organization to come in and help towards this research. So, but you hear this time and again with, individuals who suddenly come up with an idea and then there's someone else that wants to take the credit for it. So I feel it's really important, William, that you get this down in a book and, to get everything that you've experienced and what you've discovered in some form of written way. I think that would benefit you greatly in terms of that, because, you get people that would discount it and those that will, accept it.
Well, we know, as I was just going to add, that with anything abnormal or paranormal or out of the box, outside the box, it's rather like the Roswell crash, the incident that happened. Now, I'm a firm believer a spaceship of foreign production did crash there, but they covered it up. It's like also the Montauk project, the Philadelphia experiment. I do believe there is something to that, where they tried to render the ship invisible. It was at times when they were tampering with science and technology and pushing the limits. And I suppose they see this is no different from that, something new and radical, and they don't like it. So what they'll do is they'll openly reject it, but secretly, as you said, like a sponge, they suck it all up and use the work they've learned from others, basically standing on your shoulders to achieve results. When you were talking about so many, I think, wasn't it 18 photons they can send? It's rather like using a black and white telly, and you've discovered high definition.
Correct. They're using Atari, and I'm using the new PlayStation.
I like that. That's cool. So William, where I know that you've said that you're now collating all the information, you've collated it, and you're sending out, you're seeing what's happening. Have you had any feedback yet from anyone with regards to your research?
At this time, there has been no scientific investigation of the discovery. Now, I'm continuing to communicate the results globally. So I'm reaching out to physicists around the world, and I'm targeting also, universities. So now I'm sending this information. There's applied physics labs. I have my information going everywhere. And what I'm doing is going to continue to promote or send out the information so other people can see it. And once someone does contact me, I'm hoping to work with them with the progression of this discovery and seeing what we could do to get articles published into, Nature magazines or scientific articles to where we can actually make it official. Because at this time, I have not the slightest clue how to publish a scientific article.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain protocols that need to be followed. Perhaps your best avenue would be going through to some of the UFO magazines and addressing it there, because I think that you'll have more success with them, with most of the UFO magazines and research materials, because they kind of most of them are very open-minded about this type of thing. But certainly your bent light experimentation is indeed fascinating.
Just remember what you were saying. Not only have I reached out to scientists, now I've reached out to some of the higher names in the disclosure community. Oh. And these same people are completely dismissing and ignoring the discovery as well. Many people in the United States and beyond are completely dismissing the discovery and want nothing to do with the information that I'm bringing to the table.
Now, that is very odd. And also, I do agree with you, because within UFO research, you will have two factions. One faction is about money and fame, and the other one is about serious research. So I totally agree with you in that department. It's like with anything, with any corporation or organization, you'll have one right wing, you'll have one left wing. It happens everywhere. But going into you with regards to your psychic explorations, I know that you had some very crazy stuff happen to you with regards to communications from spirit, or we assume as spirit, through a radio in a car. Is that correct? Can you furnish us on a little bit about the paranormal stuff that happened with you there?
Yeah, so in the beginning of the discovery, I arrived to a job. I got into my car at the end of the day. It was 3:33 in the afternoon, and my car radio starts flashing. At this time, many unexplained things were happening, so I was very aware of my surroundings. So anytime I seen something, I tried to get physical evidence of what I was observing so that I could put it public, because I try not to put anything public unless I have physical evidence to back it. So the radio started flashing, so I started recording, and when I got home, I reviewed the video, and on the video, you could see it displayed on the radio screen 1999. And then it displayed my initials, WHL. Then it displayed 1499. And then it displayed some form of hieroglyphics. The first letter was an upside down leaf. The second, third, and fourth were numerical. And then the very last looked like a horse with a dash to the right, upper right of it. And what I discovered by looking for this language is that the language doesn't exist. The only closest language I could find was the Emerald Tablet, which was written, I believe, by Thoth. It was one of the earliest written pieces, and I believe Isaac Newton may have translated it, and what he translated was that it related to the sun.
Wow, that is, you know what I'm telling you, William, you are definitely being guided by some alternative forces of consciousness. And I normally, I know that 3:33 is around about the time that people get abducted in the early hours of the morning. I'm not saying you're going to get abducted, but it's kind of like really very amazing how all these synchronicities is like kind of like opened your mind, and you've been able to go back and then try and put the pieces together.
With the help of people and followers. So I went public with the information back in 2015. And that same house where this incident occurred, I asked the woman of the house, I was talking to her about the incident, and she said that her son was born at 3:33 and that there was an angel that watches over him, a spirit in the house. And the day before, I was talking to my boss about my discovery. And for some reason, I just feel like whatever entity is watching over the boy helped the higher ups relay the message. So she may have followed me to the car, and she was able to help them, wherever they are, send me the message.
It's amazing, isn't it? That's quite incredible.
Yeah, I think all of us to a degree, those that are going through an awakening process as souls, I mean, I certainly believe in reincarnation. I think we as souls choose that. And I believe that, we don't just come in randomly, just willy-nilly. I believe that the process is very gentle and very delicate. You also had a sleeping prophet. I'm sure you've heard of him, Edgar Cayce, who was quite a remarkable man and able to go into a person's past lives and sometimes a future life. And it certainly feels to me that what's been going on with you is that you've been assisted by some form of higher intelligence to get this across, because at the moment our world is pretty screwed up, and everyone's starting to panic about energy and communication and all this type of thing. And I also believe that the system, most of it's corrupt. The corrupt system has tried to keep a hold on all of us to keep us dumbed down.
It's crumbling, though.
It's crumbling. And I believe that people like yourself who are going through an awakening process, a remarkable awakening process, is trying to get people to look at new ways of communication. Just think what could be communicated from advanced civilizations through this distribution of knowledge within light. I mean, you've obviously thought about that yourself.
I have, and there's many openings where it is going to open up energy. We can ask them questions and they can tell us. We can communicate instantly anywhere. So communication, technology, energy, power. We could have free power. And what's interesting about the discovery is that it's so simple. Now, I did more research and found that I believe it was John Dee and Edward Kelly. Edward Kelly and John Dee in England were using similar technique where they had what appeared to be a black bowl with water, and they would shine light into it, and they were able to see these spirits and entities, and they were able to catalog and write down information that they were picking up. And what they were using is water, metal, and light.
Yes, that's right, because John Dee was the Queen's, they called him the Queen Elizabeth's sorcerer.
They were using the same methods.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, going back to scrying, the ancient Egyptians used it to communicate with the dead. I've had an experience with a black mirror, and I saw a deceased friend of mine who'd passed with cancer, and he appeared to me very clearly through the black mirror, as clearly as I would see my brother or anyone else. There was no form of communication, but I certainly agree with what you're saying, because it's all got to do with light and with the reflection of light, because
even Notre Dame use a brown bowl and water. So it's very simple discovery. And what I'm using is these ancient techniques, but I'm bringing in digital photography. That's the only thing that I'm adding to the ancient technique is digital photography. So I'm able to take photographs faster than the naked eye can see. And so I'm using what technology they use 500 years ago, but now I'm doing it in a controlled fashion and taking digital photographs, and I'm able to possibly see what they were seeing then.
That's amazing. The old with the new. I love the phrase they coined. They do it with mirrors. It's quite true, though.
I think so. And Aleister Crowley was also another, a lot of people have got different ideas about him. I mean, they called him the most evil man on this planet. Yet I believe what he was doing was that he was trying to explore areas that the churches were dead, excuse the phrase, against. But I have to tell you that he performed an initiation apparently in Roswell before the craft actually appeared. And his spirit guide was something called Lamb. And I must state that his spirit guide looks very similar to a grey. So our concept of interstellar communication that people have with these so-called greys and other entities from different dimensions may not be as far away as we once thought, because we tend to think that they're billions of light years away when really they could be much closer to home. The mind is the corridor, isn't it? The mind is the opening, isn't it? This is where a lot of things can come through. What's your take on that with regards to mind consciousness?
With the mind, what I've discovered through my research is that the mind and thought, even your thought process, is all connected to visible light frequencies. Therefore, you have neurons inside your brain that are sending these light frequencies, these little photons back and forth. And even your nervous system is like a fiber optic cable. So everything inside the body is light. Even our thoughts and every memory we have in our mind is held in a neuron, and that neuron is light frequencies. So with quantum entanglement, where you can entangle data and information, that information can be transferred instantly to any place. Therefore, we all must be connected to somewhere else, which brings up the fact that we are here in a physical body. Our consciousness, our soul, our spirit, however you want to describe it, we are here physically. But when we lose this physical body, our consciousness is transferred back. And that fact alone leads me to believe that our source is not here. We started somewhere else. We came here and we're going back. So there's a good possibility that not only are we here, but we're there too, wherever that there is.
I love that. That's absolutely, it's like they call it the Akashic Records, but we are part of that. I love that, what you've just said, William. That just makes absolute sense.
You're playing a video game.
Yeah. And I've seen the other side myself many years ago when I had an experience, nearly drowned. But I can tell you that I call it the awakening process. Basically, it's when we physically die here, consciousness is no longer limited within its flow of awareness, which the human brain to some extent does, unless we try and break free from that. And then it's kind of like all the other memories come together in one single moment, and the other side is more real and more amazing and incredible than we can possibly imagine here. It's just that we've not, I wouldn't say forgotten, it's because we're going through a journey perhaps of more creation, but I think our system down here has been hijacked by some pretty evil guys.
Yeah, but what William's saying is quite true, that we're connections to a hub, a main hub.
Yeah.
You know,
I
we
like
are
that.
of one source, but we are sprinkled out like raindrops. I like that.
So do you see any, real communication with us as humans, with so-called interdimensionals? I mean, do you ever see that happening within our lifetime? Do you ever see it happening at all, William?
Well, that is the foundation that I'm establishing at this point. So what I've discovered was the frequency. So now that we know the frequency, we now can develop the technology to build the platforms to communicate with them. And what I can see as far as future is us having what we're doing now. We'll be able to have conversations with life after life and wherever we go. So when we're here on Earth and we leave this Earth and we travel back, we're not theoretically dead. We just left the Earth. So death will become an illusion. And like I said earlier, time is something that I really don't believe in at this point, or space, because in the quantum realm, and the universe is so large, but on a macroscopic quantum realm, information can be transferred faster than the speed of light. Therefore, there is no time in between any destination. So I can be on the other side of the universe instantly. So therefore, I can travel anywhere faster than the speed of light. I could just be there. So as far as time and space, I don't believe too much in both of those entities being even forming, or what, I don't know how to describe it. But when it comes down to the technology to communicate, yes, there's a good possibility that I will be able to give my own eulogy at my funeral.
Breaking all the laws of physics, you see, that's right, because we're so constrained by matter-of-fact equations that sometimes, as you said, when you look outside the box, or you're outside the box, things can change drastically. I like that, William.
There's a question I wanted to ask you, and it may be a little bit unrelated to your research, but a burning question I want to ask you. Do you believe, William, that we were genetically modified with regards to us as a physical human race, or do you believe it all happened just by chance? I've been dying to ask you that question.
What I've discovered through my research is that I've found advanced reptiles and I found mammals, humans. So it can't be proven or disproven, but we can theorize. But yes, there is a possibility, and it's not outside the realm of science, that there could have been a way to genetically modify the human bodies that we have now to host consciousness and be to where we are. But now, if it wasn't supposedly for a massive comet, there's a good possibility that reptiles would have evolved on Earth and been the dominant species. So the other possibility is that we just evolved this way, and that because of certain circumstances that happened to the Earth, mammals were able to become the dominant species. But now there's other worlds in our galaxy and in our universe that could have followed the same evolutionary design without anyone intercepting into it, anyone tinkering with the DNA. So then in nature, it could possibly be that we just evolved this way, but in other worlds, reptiles would evolve to be the dominant species and would therefore evolve to be like humans. Insects could have been the most dominant species. Or like you're saying, there could be some mad scientist somewhere just creating and picking, like, I want insects to be here, I want mammals to be here, reptiles here, and so on. So the list goes on. So there's many possibilities, but I'm not saying anything is out of the realm. I'm just saying evolutionary, that we could have just evolved this way, and then on other worlds, other species could evolve that way as well.
Yeah, and it's any wonder that most of us have been kept in the dark continuously from these higher echelons, who it's their purpose to make us believe that we are just physical blood and flesh machines that have a sell-by date. We don't ask any questions. We toil the soil. We pay our taxes. We don't ask any questions, and then we die. And it's good folk like you, sir, who are really pushing the boundaries with regards to your brilliant research, Bent Light. I just want to ask you, William, with regards to how you're now moving forward. I know that you're sending this all out. You've said that your research is hopefully will be in the hands of other people, but you yourself, where are your plans? Where do you want to go next?
My future plans is to continue to communicate the experiment, but also find and research the technology and new discoveries in quantum physics that allow it to be possible. And possibly, if need be, I will continue to run the experiment. But it's not fair to me if you have the government looking in at everything that you do, and then if they can't do it, and now I'm doing it for free for them when they're going to ignore me. So I feel sometimes it's best that I don't even run the experiment, because I'm only giving them what they want without them coming to me saying, hey, we need to work with you. So I'm in between right now. So I'm not sure what the future holds. I know I'm writing articles on my website, which is bentlights.com.
Yeah, brilliant.
And you can find all the information there. And then what you were describing earlier, it seems that even with the religious, the spiritual realm, it seems that what I discovered connects that. And there was a lot of disconnect between the UFO connection and religion and God and science. That science, most importantly, the disconnection of science and religion is completely disconnected. And what I'm hoping to do is bridge the gap and show you that scientifically this is possible, and what I've discovered could be scientific proof that God exists or something higher up does exist.
Yes. Well, I've always believed that. My brother as well, that there is a higher consciousness. I don't believe it's a man or a woman. I believe it's an energy source that perhaps the Creator has created for us to create, for it to learn more about itself through us, through this process of creation. And I think it's a wonderful experience. It never seems to end. I know that Delors Cannon was one of your most prominent researchers into the quantum realm of healing and also accessing memories from not just past lives, but those on the other side. So certainly we wish you the very best of luck, Will, with regards to your continual research with Bent Light. So tell us again, how can people get hold of you or look at your work?
Yeah, all the information and articles are published on the Bent Light webpage, which is bentlights.com. There I have photographic evidence, there's different articles, and also all the shows that I do to communicate the results. So I'm trying to organize everything. So when you come there, you can just access everything, all the information.
Well, that is fantastic. And, Will, I've just got to say it's been a pleasure having you on board on our show, Twin Souls. We would love for you to come back onto the show.
Of course, yeah.
In the future to catch up to see how you're doing and where your research is taking you, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that would be fine. And I do appreciate you guys having me on. And thank you very much for discussing this discovery and what the potentials in the future could be.
A truly remarkable discovery at that, and I believe it's going to lead to something much bigger. So thank you very much, William, for coming on board. You've been listening to Twin Souls Radio. Your hosts, Philip and Moral Kinsella.